Projekt Guru.
Всем привет! С вами Zak Novak на радиостанции Novorossia Rocks. Welcome to Novorossia Rocks radio station. This is Zak Novak, your American in downtown Donetsk. The program is called Projekt Guru, and Guru is in the house as always. Guru, thank you so much for all the hard work that you do. Andre, my engineer, is back from vacation. Welcome back, Andre. Let's get right to it. Turkish-backed rebels, a disaster, losing territory, and 30,000 refugees heading for the border. Pressing the U.S. regime to abandon its support for the Kurdish YPG, the Turkish Nazi government has thrown considerable effort behind a group of rebel factions in the northern Aleppo province to launch an offensive against ISIS, seeing that as a way to convince the U.S. that non-Kurdish rebels can be successful too. It didn't take long for it to become a disaster. The rebels captured the town of Al-Rai and saw it as a major gain. 4 days later, they lost the town back outright, and the ISIS counteroffensive pushed back even further, hitting the territory of the Turkmen-dominated rebels. Not only, Guru, listen to this, not only did they not keep Al-Rai, but the fighting has displaced some 30,000 civilians who are all flocking to the Turkish border and are by and large being prevented from crossing by Turkish forces who don't want any more refugees. The initial hope was that Al-Rai would get overwhelmed by the rebels and they push on all the way to Jarabulus, ousting ISIS from the Aleppo border region. The city of Jarabulus along the Euphrates has also been targeted by the Kurds, and Turkey has threatened war if the Kurds capture it. If the rebels had taken it from ISIS, it'll solve the problem, but instead the offensive seems to have just added to the refugee problem and once again underscored how little a lot of the Western-backed rebels can accomplish. Let's go to Yemen. More misery in Yemen as the Obama regime, Blackwater, and UAE continue more horror. Already involved in the Saudi war in Yemen, the United Arab Emirates, UAE, and the Obama administration are in talks to launch a completely separate conflict in Yemen, this time focused against Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. ACAP. Details are still scant, and U.S. officials decline to offer specifics because of operational security, but the UAE has apparently sought U.S. air support and logistics help for the offensive, knowing the administration is eager to go after ACAP. While we don't know who is doing the fighting, the smart money is on the UAE using their second army, a group of mostly Colombian mercenaries initially created by Blackwater founder Eric Prince, as the UAE has already been using these mercenaries in the other Yemen war. ACAP holds considerable territory in Yemen, including virtually the whole Abayan province and the major southern port of Al-Mukalla. Ironically though, ACAP had some territory in Abayan before the Saudi war, which both the US and UAE are involved in, was the opportunity by which ACAP gained much of its territory. The Nazi Obama administration pushing for more war, total madness as people are suffering and living in misery. Over the weekend, U.S. officials reiterated that the Obama administration has designed a dramatic escalation of the ground wars in Iraq and Syria, with near-term plans to send as many as 200 more ground troops into northeastern Syria to train the Kurds. The expectation is that the U.S. forces will play a key role in the battle over ISIS, capital city of Raqqa, though the Kurdish YPG has been predicting the capture of Raqqa within a matter of weeks for well over a year now and hasn't made a serious effort to attack the city. There are also plans for a significant escalation in Iraq, though the timing of this is less certain because of the ongoing political row over Prime Minister Haider Abadi's cabinet. The US and Iraq made a deal to cap ground troops in Iraq at 3,870, and the US is believed to be close to 5,000 at this point, with more coming all the time. Even though the Iraqi government has mostly looked the other way at the U.S. skirting their deal, large new deployments would virtually oblige Abadi to say something, as the premier is already facing pressure from parliament for allowing so many ground troops in Iraq. Guru, back with Turkey. Remember the situation with the Turkish-backed rebels, the catastrophe trying to fight ISIS, and everything just became a disaster, and 30,000 refugees. Well, listen to this. Terrorist NATO member Turkey shooting at refugees. After a Turkish-backed rebel offensive against ISIS in Aleppo province turned into a disaster, Turkish border troops were scrambling to keep 30,000 refugees displaced by ISIS counteroffensive from fleeing into Turkey. That's getting them some serious criticism. Human Rights Watch reported on Friday that Turkish border guards responded to the refugees approaching the border with live ammunition, opening fire on the crowds to drive them back. The refugees have since stayed along the border waiting, and this is all caused by Erdogan, and this is all caused by the Obama administration as well. Turkey's foreign ministry confirmed that there are refugees from the ISIS counteroffensive, but insists that they didn't shoot at them and that the whole incident is just made up. This is not the first time Turkey has been accused of shooting at refugees. Turkey has faced an influx of millions of refugees from the civil war and has repeatedly tried to convince the US to go in on them with a plan to invade and occupy a section of northern Syria as a safe zone for refugees to hide in, arguing the area would also be a nice base for pro-US rebels. As Turkey faces growing pressure from the European Union to keep the refugees out of Europe, they have become much more hostile to letting them into Turkey to begin with, though with no real alternatives, refugees are likely to keep trying to push northward at all costs. Hey everyone, let me bring in my lovely co-host Nataliya. She's going to bring us some horrible news the last 24 hours in the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic. But also, I want to mention this. Everybody, please visit my Facebook page. It's Help for Detsky Dom, the orphanage in Donetsk. If you go to my page, you're going to see the card number, the PayPal number, the attention for the family name, and please help out, folks. Contribute as much as possible for these beautiful, beautiful, adorable children that are suffering due to the Kiev Junta regime.
Military sitrep of Novorossia. Donetsk and Gorlovka shuddered with explosions of Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian fighters used artillery at the northern suburb of Donetsk on the eve. Ukrainian side started shelling of villages Veselaya, Volva Center and airport at about 8:30 p.m. 6 artillery missiles were launched. In regard to the information of the resource, village Trudovsky in the west of Donetsk was also severely shelled. Town Dokuchaevsk and village Sakhanka to the south of Donetsk were subjected to shelling. The hostility used mortars of 120 mm caliber and 82 mm caliber. Along with artillery, mortars and infantry combat vehicles, grenade launchers were used. According to the resource, the shelling carried out from occupied Novotroitskaya, Peske, Opытnaya, Krasnogorovka and Shirokina. The information concerning destroying and casualties is being checked. It was earlier reported yesterday that 350 shelling by Ukrainian armed forces at the territory of DPR was conducted. Civilian wounded in Gorlovka as a sequence of shelling committed by Kiev fighters. Local dweller of Zaitseva got numerous fragmental wounds. DPR Defense Ministry has reported today. House got numerous damages on Rybalka and Politaeva streets. Building of administration and school were directly struck. Kiev is still committing genocide of Donbass population. OSCE mission fixes violations every day, and nothing changes. Kiev stopped fulfilling Minsk agreements last year. Ukrainian government has not adopted a range of laws according to Minsk.
Andre, very sad. Death count in Ecuador. Earthquake reaches 272. At least 272 people were killed by Saturday's devastating earthquake in Ecuador. President Rafael Correa said Sunday evening in an address to the nation. Officially, the number of those killed in the country totals 272. The scale of the tragedy is huge, but we will be able to move forward. He called the quake the biggest tragedy in the past 67 years. Correa said rescuers and firefighters pay the main attention to the search for survivors under the debris of buildings. There are signs that there could be many survivors. A magnitude of 7.8 quake occurred in the evening of April 16 near the town of Pedernales in the country's northwest. Its seismic center was located at the depth of 20 kilometers. A number of regional countries, including Bolivia, Colombia, and Venezuela, have already sent to Ecuador rescuers and humanitarian aid. Let's go to Brazil, where the Obama administration is causing problems there. The lower house of Brazil's parliament on Sunday supported impeachment of President Dilma, who I adore very much, by the way, with the idea's advocates securing the support of 2/3 of deputies required for its passing. The issue of impeachment will now be put to the consideration of the Senate, the upper house of parliament. If over 50% of senators support it, Dilma will leave her post for 180 days, during which parliamentaries will consider her case. During that period, the country will be led by Vice President Michel Temer. If senators disagree with the arguments of presidential impeachment initiators, Dilma will return to her post. Otherwise, Temer will remain on the post of the president until 2018 election. Armenia and fascist Azerbaijan accuse each other of ceasefire violations. Azerbaijani Defense Ministry said on Monday Armenia's forces have violated ceasefire 115 times over the past 24 hours, while Yerevan said it has registered around 50 ceasefire violations on the contact line in Nagorno-Karabakh by Baku overnight. Azerbaijan said its army positions located along the border between the two countries and in Nagorno-Karabakh have come under fire. Armenian forces also used 60mm mortars and large caliber machine guns, the ministry said. Azerbaijani forces retaliated with 116 fire strikes on the Armenian positions. Armenia's defense ministry said overnight the situation on the line of contact of the conflicting Karabakh and Azerbaijani forces remained the same. Azerbaijani opened fire from various types of small arms and also used 82mm mortars in the northeastern direction. The Azerbaijani side also attempted to deploy a sabotage group consisting of 20 members to the eastern direction of the contact line. The Karabakh forces detected the group and repelled it. The situation along the contact line of conflict sides in Nagorno-Karabakh and disputed territory between Armenia and Azerbaijan deteriorated dramatically overnight, April 2nd, when fierce clashes began. The parties to the conflict accused each other of violating the truce. At a meeting of chiefs of general staff of Armenia and Azerbaijan in Moscow, an agreement was reached on a ceasefire from noon local time on April 5th. Guru, Andre, listen to this. Fifth column fascist pigs. There are attempts to form anti-Russian moods in Crimea, and by means of falsification of information on historical facts and distortion of interpretation of modern events, to question the results of the referendum on reunification of Crimea with the Russian Federation, the denial of the results of the nationwide referendum, including the referendum on making Crimea part of Russia, should be equalized with extremist activity. Russian Investigative Committee Chairman Alexander Bastrykin said in an opinion piece published on the Kommersant Vlas magazine, the Republic of Crimea and Sevastopol, a city with a special status on the Crimean Peninsula where most residents are Russians, refused to recognize the legitimacy of authorities brought to power amid riots during a coup in Ukraine February 2014. Crimea and Sevastopol adopted declarations of independence on March 11, 2014. They held a referendum on March 16, 2014, in which 96% of Crimeans and 95% of Sevastopol voters chose to secede from Ukraine and join the Russian Federation. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed the reunification deals March 18, 2014. Work to integrate the Crimean Peninsula into Russia's economic, financial, credit, legal, state power, military conscription, and infrastructure systems has been actively underway since Crimea acceded to the Russian Federation. Castro warns Cubans the Obama regime will try to alter our system. President Raul Castro of Cuba on Saturday offered a somber assessment of his nation's economic advances and warned that the United States, despite the historic thaw in relations, was still intent on changing Cuba's communist system. In a 2-hour speech at the opening of the Cuban Communist Party's 3-day Congress, President Castro said that the United States, in promoting the island's small private sector, was using other means to undermine the system. Islanders needed to be alert more than ever. The comments in a wide-ranging speech amounted to a pushback against President Obama, who made a groundbreaking visit to Cuba less than a month ago. "We are not naive," Mr. Castro said, adding that the powerful external forces hope to create agents of change to end the revolution. In a speech that veered between the shining those who resisted change and warning of the perils of moving too quickly, President Castro admitted that the government had completed only a fifth of the economic changes approved at the last Congress in 2011, and that Cubans still struggled to get by on their paltry state salaries. The country was being held back by the weight of an absolute mentality, he said, adding that the worst that the revolutionary can do, whether they are a communist or not, is to cross their arms in the face of problems. 500,000 Cubans now work outside the government sector, but the country's economy is growing at less than 3% a year. Entrepreneurs have limited access to goods and are prohibited from exporting them. The Congress, the first since the United States and Cuba restored diplomatic relations last year after more than 50 years of hostility, will take stock of the economic reform program and elect the party's leadership for what will be the final years of President Castro's tenure. Hey folks, as I stress always, everybody be safe, stay on alert, and see you all on Wednesday. Bye-bye, folks.